that note, I am very excited to move on to our next panel of the day, our first panel of the day, and it is on a subject that is near and dear to Crest, and it is over-tourism. We'll be looking at the value versus volume proposition today, and I am so delighted and honored to welcome a few colleagues, people that have been such an important part of the Crest world, and folks that represent this region to the stage. So I will bring you all up one by one. First, I just want to welcome up our incredible moderator. He's the CEO of Tourism Cares, a longtime friend of Crest, collaborator in the Future of Tourism Coalition, Mr. Greg Takehara. We also have on the panel former Crest managing director, current Crest board member. I couldn't do this work without her. Crest wouldn't exist without her. I could go on for hours. Samantha Bray, who also is now, and I didn't get this corrected on Friday, is not a PhD student. She is a PhD candidate. So, Samantha, welcome. Then we have the Director of Communications for Discover Newport. So excited to have a regional representative in the room, Cassandra Earle. Everybody give it up for Cassandra, please. And last but not least, also provided great help in developing this event. Please welcome the owner and founder of Northeast Experience, also with a regional perspective, Christine Dunton-Tinnus. Welcome up, everybody.
All right, can everyone hear me? Good morning, everyone. It is my incredible pleasure to kick off with the first panel discussion of this session. As Wes mentioned, a topic that's very near and dear to our hearts, but one that, as he mentioned from the start, we are going to attempt to be bold about, and as well, completely understanding that there's a lot of different perspectives around over-tourism. So we're going to share our perspectives, and what I'd like for each of you to do is, if you share a different perspective, jot that down on the note and put that in the box, because we would love to hear all perspectives around this very important topic. What our objectives are going to be for this particular panel discussion is to really define as best we can what over-tourism means and how it's different across places. We have the benefit, as we said here, of having a regional and very close by in Newport perspective, but as well a very global perspective that Samantha and I can hopefully share additional perspective on. We're also going to try to address how destinations can reimagine success across, across various different destinations beyond arrival counts, and try to focus on what policy, planning, and private sector actions can rebalance visitor economies. We will also look to see how we can create tourism systems where both residents and visitors thrive. One of the things that Wes had mentioned was the fact that Tourism Cares is a co-founding member of the Future of Tourism Coalition. And one of the first things that coalition did was we developed 13 guiding principles. And it's always interesting to me because they're so foundational, and we're so fortunate to have over 700 signatories to those 13 guiding principles. And if you refresh your memory on those 13 guiding principles, you will see them threaded throughout this entire conversation. So if we were truly in a world where everybody followed those 13 guiding principles, we probably wouldn't be talking about over-tourism. But indeed, we're not at that place. We are also in a place where There's a lot of divide, and there's a lot to be said about the lexicon of the words that we're using today. Certainly, overtourism is a very paradoxical phrase that many feel in some ways are not fair to the tourists. In some instances, there's a lot of resident sentiment. We've seen the stories about the water pistols and everything else. So we know that this is an important topic. My being a Libra is very telling in that I always look for balance. And I think that this is a topic where balance is absolutely necessary. And it is very difficult to find balance. And I think that we're very fortunate to have the three panelists that we have today to really help us to find that balance. I think one of the things that we've come to as a general conclusion that we just kind of want to set the stage is that overtourism is really not the disease. It is really the symptom telling us that the system is out of balance. And we're really fortunate with this group of panelists that we're going to get perspectives from academia, from the DMO world, from the consultancy world to give us really a range of perspectives. So I'm going to let them each introduce themselves further beyond what's on your SCED app and talk about how you see overtourism in your work and share a little bit about your perspective.
Thank you, Greg. Oh, I'm not. There we go. No? Yes, hello? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Hoganson-Bray. I'm the former managing director of Crest and now serve on the board, but I also wear many other hats, so I've developed quite a unique perspective to this topic of over-tourism and all of the topics that the Future of Tourism Coalition's guiding principles encompass. I am a PhD candidate through University of Waterloo in Ontario, studying the topic of destination stewardship, which we'll dig into a lot more in the next panel, but it's rooted in care for places where tourism occurs. And I also am a business owner. I have a bed and breakfast in my hometown, my population now 62 hometown, where the community is just starting to consider tourism as an opportunity to enhance their well-being. I also serve on the board of Crest, so I have the global perspective, and just recently joined the board of the DMO in the county where a bed and breakfast is. And I also have a 2.5-year-old who I want to be able to enjoy traveling and meeting new people and connecting to the world in ways that I feel very privileged to have done. And frankly, we're not doing a great job of stewarding Mother Earth for our future generations. So I really think of over-tourism in terms of balance. And if tourism is out of balance with the place, it's pretty easy to see whenever you arrive somewhere. So what strategies can all the different stakeholders, which encompasses the obvious tourism voices that are in the room, but it's really about community. It's not about tourism. Nothing we're talking about today and tomorrow is about tourism. There are root foundational topics that we're all talking about. So I've so enjoyed getting to know these two and talking about the foundations of our communities that are really basing our work on value over volume.
Good morning, everyone. I am Cassandra Earle, the Communications Director of Discover Newport. We are the Tourism Board, or DMO, for Newport and Bristol County. We are 9 coastal communities on the eastern coast of Rhode Island, just neighboring, just down the road from here. And I have had the fortune of calling Newport area home personally and professionally for over 20 years now. And when you live in an island community, which I have for over 20 years, you see that there is a finite amount of resources. And all the things that I have fallen in love with in that area, the natural beauty, the community, the people, is what I am able to share now from my perspective as a DMO, but it's also our responsibility to preserve and protect and to tell the right stories from that angle in order for both the local community and visitors that we welcome from all over the world to enjoy. So there is this innate second nature that kind of comes with living in an island community for decades that, again, you have this responsibility to preserve that and to lean into the stories and to support the community in that way. I have worked in the hospitality industry my entire career, predominantly in the Newport region. So having worked with the chefs and the hoteliers and the front desk and the housekeeping team, I have a deep passion for the people who make the hospitality and tourism economy work. It's also, again, our responsibility to support those members of our community as well. So when I think about over-tourism, balance, I think, is a theme that we keep coming back to, and it's a balance and responsibility of being able to not only protect the seasons and the seasonality that we see certainly throughout the entire New England region, just like the Cape here, Newport will see a triple, if not quadruple, population during the summer season. And also being able to understand where else within our region can we help offset that balance. We do have communities in our region that do not reach capacity during the summer season. So despite our efforts to promote strictly the winter seasons in our area, the people are still coming, and how do we create that balance? But again, from the lens of having been both a local and a hospitality and tourism professional for 20 years in that area, there is this symbiotic relationship between the two. They both need to thrive in order for the community and the economy to grow, and for its citizens to be able to thrive as well. But we have to be able to protect and tell the right stories from within that region in order to do so properly.
Well, hello everyone. What a beautiful spot to be. So thank you so much for the invitation and for being part of this wonderful panel. And Greg, you as the moderator, what an honor to be here. My name's Christine Dunton-Tinnus. I'm the founder and owner of Northeast Experience. And what we do is we help destinations and businesses create responsible travel through education, storytelling, and experience design. And I know, Greg, we talked about this in our initial planning call, that over-tourism is I don't like the word over-tourism. It's blaming the visitors. And at the end of the day, what we're seeing in the work that we're doing with destinations is most of the time it's a lack of plan. So what that means is it creates an imbalance. It puts strains on infrastructures, on the environment, on the quality of life of residents. And the way it shows up for me personally, I live in Marblehead, a good example in the month of October. I don't know if anyone knows of Salem. Probably. Is anyone from Salem here in the room? It's really hard to get anywhere past Salem if you're driving north in the region, especially in the month of October. They have, I think the total amount of residents is 45,000, and alone in the month of October, they received over 1 million visitors. So that, for me, on a personal level, is something that I would call, it's kind of an impact on the quality of life, scheduling around my son's soccer games and trying to get north. From a business professional level, on the positive side, we're seeing more and more destinations and individual, actually businesses and residents reaching out to us saying, we need a plan. How can we manage tourism in our community? Just a few weeks ago, we helped Gloucester to get tourism on the agenda in front of their chamber to start thinking about a plan. The business saying to us, we're not afraid we're going to be the next Venice, but we do want to have a plan in place. And I thought that was, the best thing that they could do to get started in thinking about that issue.
Great. Thanks, Christine. I really would be remiss if I didn't thank Dr. Jonas for her beautiful keynote speech. She really set the stage by some of the things that she said for this conversation. Obviously, we're not living in reciprocity. And we have, over-tourism is a symptom of a non-symbiotic relationship. And it really questions whether people are honoring the place. So I thank her for kind of setting the stage for this discussion. And going forward, I'd really like to talk to Sam, especially coming from an academic viewpoint, to really better understand the root causes of over-tourism. We're talking in particular about the volume versus value paradigm, And many, like you said, Christine, are using other words. I've heard under management used quite frequently when talking about over-tourism. So Samantha, your research focuses in large part on tourism governance within destination communities. Why is tourism so difficult to manage? And what are some of the barriers and challenges to effective governance?
That's a great question. Governance is something that I never thought I would find so fascinating. It sounds so boring, but it's so, so important. Tourism is what's called, in the academic world, a complex adaptive system. That means it's nonlinear, it's constantly in flux. There are all kinds of dynamics that affect one thing, that affect another, that affect another, all of these different relationships, interconnections between the environment, culture, the community. So getting your arms around that to kind of figure out what is the boundary here of what we're trying to manage, if we're trying to manage tourism. Where do we start and where do we end is very hard. And what's going to happen in the middle when we decide where we start and what we want to see at the end, all of that is going to happen in the middle, and we may end up somewhere totally different. So planning is great, and it is a very important exercise for awareness. And sustainable tourism principles are also very important for awareness. But being able to be flexible and adaptable and understand that things are going to happen that you didn't plan for and figure out what to do with that is very important. And bringing all of the right people around the table is also very important. We tend to focus on our core, okay, here are the tourism business owners, here are the tourism attractions, what is our plan? But really it's the folks who focus on infrastructure and public transportation and beautification and coastal conservation, preservation. Like those are the people who also really need to be at the table working in tandem to make sure that tourism can be a force for good and not degrade the very assets upon which the community depends and visitors depend in the long run. So the complexity of the system is one of the key barriers, of course. Another key barrier is that the tourism sector has long been rooted in the pro-growth paradigm, and that more is better, and we need to have more, and there's no real end seen to that. So what I'm starting to look into is what can destinations and their stakeholders do to assuage that and kind of change this perspective from volume to value. Perhaps it's, instead of focusing on getting X more visitors, it's getting this amount of visitors extend their stay by 1 or 2 nights, leaving behind more in the economy, but fewer bodies actually coming onto the Cape or wherever you may be. Perhaps it's demarketing, and that's something really hard to grasp whenever marketing is really what, a lot of tourism planning is based in. But maybe we don't need to be marketing to some of the long-haul destinations, for example, that it makes it really difficult to get there, a huge climate footprint, of course. So demarketing whenever that's necessary if you do feel that there is an oversaturation. Communicating with your visitors, telling honest stories, figuring out the stories to tell so that the visitors really can connect deeply with the place and it's not transactional. It really is more of that gift. Whenever I travel, I try to buy only locally made souvenirs. And I can't tell you how many gift shops I go into where there are the same coffee mugs. Welcome to Cape Cod. This is not a representation of Cape Cod, just an illustration. Welcome to Cape Cod, same mass-produced coffee mug, same trinket, same keychains. Oh, there's my name on a keychain with Cape Cod. Excellent. That makes me almost ill at this point. You have so many talented artisans and creators in these communities that would add so much value locally if that's what visitors were taking home. And then the visitor has that connection with a person who made this thing and this place, and it's very special. So I think in the tourism system, we just box ourselves in so much that we have to do. We need the chains. We need the restaurants people are comfortable with and have seen elsewhere. We need the mass-produced coffee mug and those keychains, those T-shirts. But really, we need to connect people with the place, get them to stay longer, get them into those local businesses, so whatever can be done to get people into those doors, I think are really valuable steps that DMOs can take. And DMOs can really act as conveners. They might not necessarily be the ones in the right position to kind of lead this charge in terms of what they can actually influence. Let DMOs do what they do best, using marketing as the tool to tell the right stories and to bring the people who care about the place, and find the other stakeholders who need to plug into the system to really make it work for everybody.
Great, thanks, Sam. You know, as has already been mentioned by Wes, I mean, we're so fortunate to be in this beautiful spot right now. And already we've talked about examples. We've already kind of honed in on regional examples, talking about Salem, talking about Cape Cod, talking about the challenges of, you know, peak season and increasingly not even peak season. And it's very evident how much over-tourism is really affecting certain areas. So we're really fortunate that from a case study standpoint, we really have a great case study in Cape Cod, and fortunate to have you, Christine, working in the Northeast. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how over-tourism really manifests itself regionally. In particular, how can destinations balance over-tourism and under-tourism in some cases? And what role should DMOs play in redistributing visitors for both resident and visitor benefit?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it's actually not so much the redistributing of volume, but it's the rebalancing of values. And back to your comment on the demarketing, I think what is really important is that we tell the right story about the destination and try to move away a little bit from selling a destination as a theme park, but more as a place with values. I think that is really such an important component of thinking about a plan for your destination and the way that you want the world to read it and to understand and to educate the visitor before they come visit your destination. So, you know, it's showing up in so many different ways, starting with, you know, we know the impact on the environment, but it's also the infrastructure, it's the housing situation, short-term rentals, and it's such an emotional topic. I know that Maine, they just decided to take a in-step approach related to short-term rentals, just because there are two sides of the coin, right? There's people who say, this is my income, and then there's the others who say, but I really want to live here, but I can't find housing. So they decided that the first step would be just to educate their residents, the landlords, and those who are visiting about certain rules around their stay in that community. Quality of life, we just talked about that with not just Salem, but also the surrounding communities. So, you know, the impact that it has if you're living in a destination that there are just more visitors coming to that destination that they can handle. So it's really at the capacity limit. So how do we make sure that we are including those resident sentiments into our planning? So what we're seeing regionally, but also globally, is I think three components that go into a really solid destination strategy, and that is to have a smart plan in place with a solid governance based on the community input. And the community, I think, should be the central piece of that plan, because at the end of the day, this is the residents. It's your community, it's where you live year long, and you have certain values. And you know, at the end of the day, it could be that your values are the economy. It could be that you say, you know, we do know that tourism is putting a strain on certain aspects, but you know, it's more important for us as a community that we want to see that revenue, and with that revenue we can make changes within the destination. So it's really, there's no one size fits all. So from a global perspective, and what we're seeing, and we're keeping a close eye on those destinations and doing some research, is one which is implemented in Denmark, in Copenhagen. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Copenpay that they have in place. So it's a really smart concept that they've implemented. It's based on those 3 components that I mentioned, with having a smart plan in place, solid governance, community input. But one aspect I forgot, it was technology, and I know there's going to be a session around that. So we have amazing technology that we can leverage and use as a destination, starting with digital twins, analytical predictions, scenario planning to look at those numbers and to see, what does it mean for my destination if I have 10% more visitors coming to our region in the following summer? What impact will that have on infrastructure, on the environment, on the quality of life? So the example of what they did in Copenhagen is they've built around the values of the residents an experience program. And what this looks like in practice is, you as a visitor, for example, if you visit a museum by bike instead of taking your car, you would be rewarded by a free ticket to the museum. So those are the concepts that we think and are seeing that are working. And there was just an announcement last week that Berlin and Bremen and Helsinki, they're actually looking into implementing that same model. Another example I would say here in the region is the state of Maine. I think the state of Maine has been doing an amazing job with their destination management plan, built on stewardship principles, and really digging into the residents' sentiments and how is tourism impacting the residents' quality of life, and what would they like to see happening in their state. So, so I think those examples, in addition to the technology that's out there. And the last part was, I think, the role of the DMO. We always think of DMO as destination marketing company. I'd like to think of it as destination management company. So, and if I think about a DMO as a management company, what I would like to see is for them really to be the glue that holds it all together. So bringing all the stakeholders to the table, thinking about experiences that will benefit both residents and visitors, and also playing a key role in how, when, and where will tourism actually happen in those destinations. So I think that's really a leadership role that I would like to see with DMOs.
Great, thanks, Christine. And indeed, I mean, I lost that phrase, right? One
Side of the coin.
No, one, it doesn't fit all.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right, no one size fits all, thank you. I haven't had enough coffee yet. But in any event, I'm hearkened to think about the fact that Tourism Cares just conducted a meaningful travel fam in Hawaii. And so interesting that they could have, you know, a situation where they have under-tourism in Maui, where people have been, you know, under this perception that they're not ready to have people back yet after the Lahaina fires, and then over-tourism in Oahu, where they're trying to spread out tourism. So, I mean, indeed, you know, or you look at something like Salem, as you said, and you could argue that there's over-tourism in 1 month and under-tourism in 11 months. I mean, you know, so I think that the challenges are unique for each and every destination, and you know, it isn't one thing where we can just characterize and say, this is the checklist, these are the solutions that's going to fit for all. So I'm going to turn to Cassandra. I know that Discover Newport is currently in the process of engaging in their strategic planning. And how are you engaging with residents during this process, and how will it shape your strategic plan?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's very timely. We are in the literal middle of our strategic planning process, which kicked off a couple months back and will conclude the beginning of 26. And this is a process that is due for us. You know, we have a new CEO at the helm, and we're looking towards the next decades of future of Discover Newport. Unlike other destinations that are just forming, Discover Newport has been, Newport in the region has been a tourist destination for centuries, literally. It's going back to a little known time called the Gilded Age, when it became sort of this resort town for America's elite. And since then, it's gone through evolutions, and at times it has been an under-tourism destination, which is hard to believe. That is currently not our issue right now. So we are looking to engage our community in this process. And so much of it goes back to what Sam said earlier of having a seat at the table with the appropriate organizations and the municipalities and having this very cohesive relationship with each of them. We have 9 communities in our region, again, so Newport is the primary tourism driver, but having deep relationships with each of these communities, their municipalities, their key stakeholders, organizations like Cape for the Islands, we have in our region, Aquidneck Resilience and Aquidneck Land Trust, and 11th Hour Racing goes on and on. So being sure that we are not only just showing up to their meetings, but having deep, meaningful conversations around, and honest, bold conversations around what is our pain points. When it comes to our community, in the actual process that we're in right now, we have held, this just over about a month ago, 3 community listening sessions. And I highlight the title of that as truly what they were, community listening sessions. And we held them in 3 different locations throughout our region, spaced out geographically so that we were able to attract as many people as we could on the days of the week and times that we were holding them. And essentially it was not quite just an open forum. We broke out the community members into groups, and we had a strategic questions that we laid out to them to ask, what were their feelings on. And it had anything to do with, literal questions of what is the pain points right now, transportation, housing that they are dealing with, how tourism has benefited or not in their daily lives. Things like how they see tourism helping to shape their community in the future. And what we got back were these really thoughtful, deep conversations in these small groups that we were able to glean some interesting overlying messages on. Transportation was a key message. Again, just wanting to preserve the daily balance and quality of life for each of the residents. But ultimately, what it gave was a platform. It gave a place for our community members to have a voice and to be a part of this process. It was a message both theoretically and in practice that we were able to engage with them to say, we value your opinion. We want to hear everything you want to say, good, bad, and ugly. Come share it with us, because this is going to help us shape how we move forward with our tourism plan. And without this information, without taking these insights into consideration, we won't be able to prepare the destination for success, both from a visitor standpoint and a community standpoint. We are in the midst, I think literally today, there's also a resident sentiment survey that's going to be rolled out to everyone in the community. This is an online survey. So while we had over 100 people at these 3 sessions over the course of 2 days come, which was a great presentation, as I mentioned earlier, Newport alone has 25,000 year-round residents, so this is only a fraction of who we were able to connect with from a face-to-face basis. So we will have online surveys that are pretty in-depth. They're a good 15 minutes to take, so we're hoping to encourage people to take that 15 minutes out of their day to share this information that we will then be able to collect from the hundreds, if hopefully not even more than that, the sentiments and concerns, opinions, feelings about our community members from across all regions. And then from there, this will go further into the strategic planning process as how we look forward and where are the overlying concerns from our community members that tourism has a positive or a negative effect on. What can we influence? What can we help change? What can we help mitigate as we lay out our plan moving forward?
Great. Appreciate that thoughtfulness. Christine, you mentioned, I'm glad you referenced the fact that we have definitely seen an evolution amongst DMOs to kind of move from that destination marketing moniker to a destination stewardship or destination management model. In some cases, like 4VI, Vancouver Island went to a full social enterprise model. So what we are truly seeing an evolution in this regard. So Samantha, can you talk more about that concept of destination stewardship and really how communities may take this approach to position tourism to first contribute to a destination community being a wonderful place to live, as well as a wonderful place to visit?
Yeah, there's a great piece by George Washington University out, anybody can access, called Destination Forward. And they took a look at different DMOs in the United States and looked at the principles they were embodying and determined, I believe there were 34 destinations that they ended up interviewing more deeply about this concept of stewardship and how it's foundational for their communities. And these destinations take a holistic perspective to tourism. So environment, culture, society, and also the economy, of course. They look at global standards for sustainability. So the Global Sustainable Tourism Council's destination criteria is a really great place for destinations to start, just kind of looking at what the framework could be for what they consider in their strategy and their planning. The third principle that GW looked at was stakeholder inclusion and engagement, exactly as Cassandra was just discussing. And the fourth I'm losing right now, cross-sectoral, yes. So public, private, and people, that those were involved. So they ended up doing more in-depth studies with these 34 communities to find out what was really driving them and what were some of the foundational commonalities that they had taking this stewardship approach, even more beyond management. Terminology is really important, and in tourism we get so mired in terminology. Like, is this sustainable tourism, regenerative tourism, geotourism? Is it management? Is it marketing? It's all of these things are really hard to figure out what do I do? Because this is a big problem, but what do I actually do? So I think just looking at community values is very, very important. There are 3 folks here from Big Bay, Michigan, the UP, who Crest worked with. Hi, friends back there. I encourage you all to take some time to chat with them if you have the opportunity. This was a case whenever Crest began working with them that they had a lot of visitors. They live right on Lake Superior, gorgeous, beautiful setting. They have great trails, skiing, cross-country skiing, hiking, camping. It's wonderful. And they were getting a lot of visitors, but didn't have any way to figure out how to manage that or steward that experience. And so when we began working together, the first thing we did was took a look at community values. And so we had these public meetings, and we did these value sorts where we cut out lots of different terms that could be, what are your values? What do you love most about your community? And it could be landscape, wildlife, family, sense of place, all of these different things. And each individual pasted those in kind of a pyramid. And then we were able to go through the data and come out with what are the core values of this community, and how can we frame your goals as a community to use tourism as a tool to enhance these qualities that are so deeply important to you. And maybe what do we not take on right now? Because if you take on everything, nothing gets done. So we implemented a strategic doing planning instead of, there were their overall goals. It's a very small community where there are a lot of volunteers doing this work. But instead of having a strategic plan, we did strategic doing. So they had their overall goals, and then each year would make an action plan of what is feasible for us to do as a community. And they had a placemaking committee, and that was really about making their community better for what they wanted as a community. And for them, those were trails and beautification. And those are things that are also good for for visitors as well. And so that committee worked specifically on that. And then there was the marketing committee that worked on telling their story on their terms, not having their story told by the county DMO, which of course partnered, but getting to decide, what are those messages that we want to put out there on behalf of our community. And then a steering committee to bring in all of the people who needed to plug into this from around the community. So it turns out to be a really special, wonderful program that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm so pleased that they're here with us today. So that's not easy, and they can chat with you about the process, but just the more values-driven work is so important. But when it comes to DMOs, there is another really great study that looks at decarbonization dimensions and what DMOs can actually do, what levers can they pull, because climate change is such a difficult and huge topic to take on. And this study looked at the resources and the processes that destination management organizations can actually influence and what level of influence they have over those dimensions of decarbonization. So this might be visitor numbers, the kind of energy that is used in the place, all of the different infrastructural forms of infrastructure that are used, et cetera. And the study found that a DMO only has a high level of influence over the process and the resources of the market mix. So who you're inviting, what story you're telling, and who you're trying to bring to the destination. So the other areas are where DMOs can act as the convener. Like, we know these issues exist. Who do we bring around the table to really be that focal point?
Great. And we've learned as we are here that for so many destinations, the environment is the economy. Let's talk more about the visitor experience, Cassandra, because I, like so many, have enjoyed visiting Newport. I'm fortunate that typically I can manage around and go during a shoulder season, but many cannot. They want to bring their children. They're going to go during the summertime. It's going to be peak season. So what are some examples of some tangible efforts that Newport is making to help manage the peak of tourism in Newport?
Yeah, and I just want to touch upon, it's a great question, and the strategic doing part of it is such an important part. It parlays exactly into going from a destination marketing organization into the management side. Again, we can attract people all we want, but what we do with them when they get there. And again, we, from a marketing perspective, have always historically focused our efforts on the shoulder season. So it is a October, November through April where our storytelling really focuses. It's where our marketing spend is. We don't really have to lift a finger to have people come in the summertime, like Cape Cod and other areas. So what do we do to help manage it when they are there? They're coming, whether or not we are inviting them, they are coming. So one of the themes that keeps coming up, and again, we're in the middle of the strategic planning process, but is transportation, i.e. traffic. So my gosh, I can't get around, whether it's, something like Salem, I can't get my kid from A to B during this month because of all the traffic coming in. Newport has, essentially has had that issue for the 20 years that I've been there, has had traffic on America's Cup Ave, the main thoroughfare, or Thames Street or Bellevue Avenue. And how do we mitigate that? And something that Discover Newport did, leaning into the DMO side of a management organization, this is going on its 4th year this year, is we have been sponsoring a free trolley system. So it is sponsored by RIPTA, the Rhode Island Public Transportation Association, in partnership with them, and we are the primary sponsor. So it's the number 67 line. And what we have when you come into Newport, there is a transportation gateway parking lot. It's just under 500 parking spaces. The trolley will get you from that parking lot and will traverse you throughout all of downtown Newport up to the mansions and then back around again. And it's on a continual loop system. So there's no schedule. It runs from X time in the morning till X time at night. It's hop on, hop off, and it's free for everyone. So that's also including community members, people who are trying to get to their jobs in the Newport area. And with that, you also have the benefit of, if you park at that transportation center, which is the center of the entrance to downtown, you get a discounted parking rate of $5. $5 for the day in Newport is a deal. So you redeem your trolley ticket, and when you leave that lot, you pay that discounted rate. So in 2024 alone, we saw 178,000 people ride that trolley. From a ridership perspective, that was 12% increase from the year prior. So again, in its fourth year. And the marketing of that is both from an out-of-home place side, so obviously the trolleys themselves, free trolley, hop on, hop off. There's signage throughout the city, so at all the trolley stops, it's very prominent and branded that this is the free trolley stop, you can get on here. And it's pretty, I don't want to say that it's almost seamless, but it's become, in its fourth year now, this seamless experience, and it runs from May through the end of October, which is our peak season. So our goal with that is to get people to move around the city without their cars, right? That's one example. We've also piloted for the past 2 years a Boston to Newport bus, which left from South Station, Boston, directly to the transportation center in Newport. And again, the goal of that was to get not only the Boston market that had maybe not have access to cars, but to allow people to ride without having to drive. And we saw a response from people as far as New Hampshire coming to us saying, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Thank you for doing this. I've been wanting to get to Newport. I didn't want to have to drive my car. I don't have to deal with parking and gas and the footprint that leaves. And I'm taking the bus now from New Hampshire to Boston, Boston to Newport. We also rely on our ferry systems. Like Cape Cod, we have this robust, we're an island. Newport's part of Aquidneck Island. So we do have ferry systems throughout the actual downtown. There's harbor shuttles that go from port to port continuously during the season, and there's a Jamestown Newport ferry that will also go from port to port, and then in between the island of Connecticut Island, also known as Jamestown, back again. It stops at historic sites like Rose Island, which is one of our historic lighthouses that you can take a tour on, and then there's also the Stee Streak ferry that runs from Providence to Newport. And I'll tell you, every time I watch that come into port, it's packed, and it's members and community members or visitors coming from the north taking the ferry down into Newport. So having a more robust ferry system is something that we envision. We're pretty proud of what we have today, but looking to enhance that even more. So a large part of our focus has been transportation, in addition to obviously storytelling and trying to tell the stories of the rest of our region outside of that area. But we've seen great success with that so far, and where we're able to spend our dollars and putting it towards a way that has an impact for both the community and the visitors is something that we're strategically looking forward to do more.
That's great. All right. We had several more questions teed up, and this conversation could obviously go on for hours, and I'd be delighted to be up here and continue the conversation. But unfortunately, we have so much more great content to come. I'm just going to let each of you just take a really quick minute to kind of talk about the overall paradigm of value versus volume. Please be bold, as Wes likes to say. Feel free to talk about the greatest challenges, barriers, or give us some sense of hope. Start with you, Christine.
I'm a Libra, so.
Oh, you look great.
There we go. I think we need to start thinking about how we measure success. And we're still measuring success, I feel, primarily through growth, right? How much more revenue can we make? How many more beds can we sell? How many more visitors can we report on? And it's a systemic issue. It's our funding is tied to that. All legislative decisions, or most of them, are tied to that. So how can we come up with a system that has other values and metrics, right, that we can use? And I think that's one of the major barriers that holds us back in making progress and trying to focus more on values and the experiences of the community and the visitors that come and visit our destination. The other point, of course, or barrier is data, right? It's so much easier to measure the beds, right, or the volume that is spent in the region compared to quality of life or other metrics that are just not so easy to put a finger on, like, housing. How do you measure it? And it's such an emotional topic too, short-term rentals. as an example. I'm thinking positive. I'm a positive person. So to give you a positive outlook and maybe an example for the region to look into, because what I find a missed opportunity is for the states, particularly here in New England. We share a common culture, very similar landscapes. Why don't we work more closely together? A lot of times I hear, oh, I didn't know that Maine is doing that. I didn't know they had a, sustainable development plan in place. So to have a little bit more of an exchange there and more on the positive side now, there is, and I'm looking at the global scale now, in Europe there is a new model, and this is, do we have any academics here in the room? Represented? Led by Breda University outside of Amsterdam, and it's called Tourism Imbalance. And what they're doing is they've implemented a model of 6 destinations across Europe of working together and looking into sustainable practices, of course related to tourism and the impact that it has, and creating experiences and to think of ways to mitigate the impact of, as an example, over-tourism. And they're sharing all that information and the experiences that they have with the different action items that they take on a platform. So I think this is it's a wonderful concept, so we'll see where it goes. I think the end of the project is early next year, but you can find it online. It's called Europe in Balance. So I think it's possible. So maybe as a way to look ahead of what's out there and what other countries are doing.
Great. Cassandra?
I would just say, from a DMO perspective, be okay with being uncomfortable. I will say, for someone who just sat through these community listening sessions and also had some media join us who wrote some lovely stories about the concerns afterward. None of that was not welcome, though. Again, it's the fact. It's people's opinion. There's no opinion in that opinion. It is what it is. So just be okay with receiving it and then being able to do something about it afterward. But to receive it, just don't have that ego and just listen, because that's half of it, is just being able to listen. And then I would say from a hope perspective, that, get out and explore. Again, from a destination perspective, we ran a marketing campaign last year that was a day in, and it had to do with every town in our region except Newport. And it was us physically boots on the ground getting into these communities. And the win-win-win of that was, it was us getting out, meeting community members, meeting business owners. We had a presence physically in areas that are less traveled by tourists. And then we were able to glean. We found these amazing storytellers who we've been able to place in mass publications like Travel and Leisure and Vogue, and what they're doing and the impact that they're having on their community. And we've really leaned into telling the story of our region by the lens of our community members and our business owners. But allowing us that one time of year, making that commitment to physically get out and just explore and be our own traveler in our own destination, we've been able to find that, and the success of that campaign alone has paid itself in dividends. We've had hundreds of thousands of views and shares and comments, and again, it had everything to do with about the region outside of Newport. 90% of our hotels and our accommodations are in Newport and just outside of Newport, but why not take a day in one of our other regions and spread that? And that can happen all year round, including the peak season, summertime. Go explore the rest of it. So we've had feedback from business owners that have said, my gosh, I was hesitant to have you post me on social media, but wow, I have had all these amazing new visitors, and we've seen that direct impact immediately, and their growth of their business, which is just like the part inside me that keeps me going. So yeah.
Thanks, Cassandra. Take us home, Sam.
Okay, yes. I think the optimism we can all have is that there is incredible work being done. There are amazing examples in this room, so take the time to talk to people and learn their story. I've learned so much from these two just hearing what you've shared today. And also there are amazing academics in this room too. Vincey's here, Tiffany's here, Jonathan Day is here. There are universities in your area that would love to work with you on real projects and to help you with your data goals. So if there are universities in your backyard or in your region and they have a tourism program or tangentially related program, please reach out, introduce yourself. Jonathan Day's lab is called the START Lab, right? Sustainable Tourism and Responsible Travel Lab at Purdue. I know that you have the RISE Institute, Vinci. There's a lot of really great stuff, and they can help with those data requirements and figuring out other metrics as well, and learn from other destinations. One aspect I'm really interested in is this concept of scalability. Okay, this great thing is happening here, what can happen here? And a great example is that from our Overtourism Forum in 2018 that Crest hosted, CARE for the Cape and Islands was able to partner with Lake Tahoe and build upon their Take Care campaign to message the visitors of how to take care of the environment when they're visiting. And so that was a great example of scaling a wonderful solution that already existed. And the last piece is this concept of stewardship. It's really growing in the industry. Los Angeles now positions itself as a destination stewardship organization, even a step past DM, the management. And Jonathan Tortolo's organization offers the free destination stewardship report in collaboration with the Global Sustainable Tourism Council and Crest. And it comes out about quarterly. GSTC just released the yearbook on that, and there are such inspiring examples throughout that free report, and it can really be a wonderful way to spur ideas and reach out to people to ask them to help you implement something like that in your destination.
All right, thank you so much.